Wednesday morning, I arrive at Heathrow Airport. I went there to meet Patrick Magee, who was travelling with me. I saw his face looking sad, some pain in his eyes, and he said, "I can't travel with you. I've been told I'm not allowed to travel through US airspace." This is because he was in the IRA as a combatant, and he planted a bomb back in 1984, which killed my father. And I was so disappointed, I cried. I cried because I knew it was a dream for him and a dream for me to come to Mexico. And he kept on trying to come, trying different routes. And he got to Mexico City, and he was deported on Friday night back to London. And as soon as he got back home, having been on flights for 3 days, 4 days, his passport taken away, not knowing what was going on, he wrote me a message to share with you. Joe Berry and I are honored to be invited to Mexico to demonstrate that despite profound differences, trust can be built, and the mutual desire to explain, to understand and be heard can be nurtured. What is more profound than Joe's willingness to try to understand my perspective, given that I killed her father? A huge lesson learned from our exploration of difference, here simply expressed, is that to build peace, we must strive to remove any obstacle to its attainment. This simple message proved too contentious for some in authority who prevented me from being with you in person today. But Joe is there, and my message will be heard. This chair is for him. Now, you may wonder how I got to a place of that disappointment and crying because the man who killed my father couldn't travel with me. And it's a long story. When my father was killed back in 1984, I didn't just lose my father that day. I lost the part of me that lived in freedom. I felt the pain of war. And I decided within 2 days to bring something positive out of it, to try to understand those who killed my father. And the journey started. It was a journey where I thought I had 2 choices. I could either blame, demonize, have a human being who was an enemy, or find a way to transform it and take responsibility. But this journey was not a journey that I knew how to go, but I trusted. The bomb started me on this journey, and within a few days I met somebody who shared with me that his brother had been in the IRA, and the IRA were the group that killed my father, and his brother had been killed by the British Army, and so we should have been enemies, but we spoke of a world where peace was possible. And it was only with the peace process that the one man responsible, Patrick Magee, was released. And I remember thinking, I would love to meet him. I'd love to hear his story. I'd love to share with him what I've been doing. I want to see the man behind the label of terrorists. This chair here is for my dad. My dad, who I loved, adored, we became very close. And I felt that he would give blessings for this part of my journey. And one day I got a phone call that I could meet Patrick Magee that evening. I remember terrified. What would I say to him? What would I feel? But I went to meet him. I remember when he walked in, looking into his eyes and thinking, "You killed my father, but you seem like a lovely person." I could tell from his eyes he was a deep thinker. And we started talking. And I listened to him. And I listened to his story. Why he joined the IRA aged 18, what was happening in his community. And after about an hour and a half, I remember thinking, I've got what I want from this meeting. I can see he has sensitivity. But he's also got a political hat on and he's justifying killing my father. So I probably won't come back for a second meeting. And in that moment, he changed. He said, I don't know anymore who I am. I want to hear your anger and your pain. And what can I do for you? And in that moment, the political hat had come off and he opened up and became vulnerable. And what had just been about my need to meet him became about his need. And he began to realize he'd lost some of his humanity by choosing violence. And he began to realize that he killed a wonderful human being. And he began to see that the things that he respected in me came from my father. And when he planted that bomb, he saw no one. And now he began to see a real human being, and that he'd lost his humanity, some of his humanity, by taking that action. And the first time we spoke in public, being about 6 months after the first meeting, we had 3 minutes to speak. I remember him saying, I now know I could sit down and have a cup of tea with Joe's dad. And I can imagine them together. That's why I had them both on the stage with me. And my dad would be there drinking his Lapsang Souchong tea. Pat would be there with his coffee. And they could listen with respect. I can imagine it. They may not agree, but they can listen with dignity and respect. And how much better would it have been if they'd had that cup of tea before violence was there. And it's a shared responsibility because the British government weren't having cups of tea with the IRA. And it was the British government who he'd attacked with the bomb. My father had been a politician. And so we can imagine cups of tea, and I ask you to imagine, who could you be having that cup of tea with right now? Who is your other? Because I have discovered that there is no other. There is no enemy. Because when we truly listen to people's story, then we're left with a knowing that if I lived your life, would I have made the same choice? And in that moment, there is understanding, empathy. Pat said he was disarmed by the empathy I gave him. And if I'd gone there arguing, he could have stayed in a place of righteousness. I no longer believe in goodies and baddies and right and wrong. We all have our truth. We're all wounded. There are times when we need to challenge behavior, but there's a difference between a person and what they do, and I've learned that with Pat. There are times when I still challenge him, and it's difficult. It's not always easy. But what I'm learning from this transforming relationship has been amazing. I still have that need sometimes to blame people. I still have this need to demonize. And so I'm accepting my own violence because I do believe it is violent when I make anyone less than human, when I don't see them in their whole humanity. I'm grateful to Pat now for what he's taught me, for the opportunities he's given me to make a difference. We've worked in different parts of the world. We've spoken over 150 times in Rwanda, Palestine, Israel. Hopefully we'll come back to Mexico together. And what happens is when we stop talking, it allows others to open up and share their story, share what's going on in their community. And this brings solidarity and strength and caring and love and compassion. And I'm grateful to my dad for what he taught me while he was alive. And I know from our work around the world that it's changing. Around the world, people are healing and becoming change makers. And with our imagination, we can work non-violently to make a difference. We need to find creative ways to challenge oppression and injustice and bring the qualities of non-violence and love and compassion and empathy. Because if I empathize with you, I'm going to want to act to make sure that you're living with safety, with food and water, be able to speak your truth. And this is the time to act together. We can't wait for governments to change. We need to do it. We need to imagine a world where everyone lives with their fullest humanity, with dignity, with all their needs met. This is the time to act together. Thank you.